Hi there from the edge of a forested swampland. Wherever you're listening from, be it in transit, walking your dog, doing the dishes, sitting at desk at your work, your kitchen table, hiding out in a tent, wherever it is, I hope that you have enough food to eat and someone kind to share it with. And I wish this for my neighbors and strangers here and around the globe. My name is Grover, and this is Grover Reads the News. I've got a news update for you, and whew, it's been a busy week. Would you like to hear it? If so, have a listen. If not, I'll offer again soon. And with that, let's hear the news. First, I have an update from the United States about coordinated resistance. On Saturday, people line danced, yelled, chanted, and held giant banners outside of more than 200 Tesla dealerships and charge stations across the US and in some European cities as part of a Tesla takedown day of action to protest Elon Musk's role in gutting healthcare, Social Security, veterans, public health, drug safety, and other government services that millions of people here and around the world rely on to live. On Saturday, the one coming up, there are more than 1,000 actions planned as part of a mass hands-off day of action in the United States and Europe. I put a link to where these actions will be taking place in the sources section at the end of the Substack or podcast show notes. Yesterday evening, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker completed the U.S.'s longest speech on the Senate floor, speaking while standing up, drinking only water, and not using the restroom for 25 hours and 6 minutes. He spoke during that day and an hour about the dangerous impacts the Trump administration's actions are having on people in the U.S. around the world, trying to evoke center-right leaders into moral responsibility, calling on them to work across the aisle to block Trump and Musk's damaging agenda, and calling on everyday people in the United States to join in opposition. Throughout his speech on the floor, Democratic senators interrupted to speak and ask a question, thereby giving Booker a break from speaking. Their questions wove their own constituent story into Booker's narrative about how the Trump administration's actions are or will make life worse for people here and around the globe. They told stories about how closed Social Security offices, the disillusion of necessary care and global food aid to people around the world, and the removal of people from the U.S. who speak out against the administration are harming their constituents. This floor speech broke a previous record that was set by segregationist Strom Thurmond in 1957 when he was opposing the Civil Rights Act. Booker, a black senator, started and ended his 25-hour, 6-minute speech with quotes from civil rights activist and former U.S. Representative John Lewis. This is the boldest action from leaders of the Democratic Party since Trump's billionaire coup started. Next up, we have U.S. Fascism Watch news. The Guardian reports that over the weekend, senior employees at the Interior Department warned that the Musk-run agency, DOGE, which is held outside the U.S. federal government, reportedly gained access to a payroll system that processes salaries for almost 300,000 federal employees. This is despite warnings from senior staff about the potential security and privacy risks of allowing DOGE access. The administration also announced layoffs this week of 10,000 government workers in U.S. health agencies, including departments that run infectious disease monitoring, drug safety, and the entire department that does Alzheimer's research. Trump also made new statements claiming there are, quote, methods he could use to secure a third term, rising concerns that he intends to implement his desire to be king dictator indefinitely. Each day, there are more reports about mass ICE sweeps in immigrant communities that are affecting grandmothers, farm workers, and people who've been here since they were children. Some have been deported without the legal process of the hearings and appeal that the law outlines, and many more are held in facilities where they are subjected to inhumane and unsafe conditions. ICE and the federal administration has increased their targeting of students with legitimate student visas who have made political statements in protests or student newspaper that the administration disagrees with. Last week, masked plainclothes ICE agents surrounded and arrested a Tufts University PhD student, Rumeysa Ozturk, who co-wrote a piece in the Tufts student newspaper about solidarity with Palestinians. There are also stories of green card holders, including Llewellyn Dixon, an elderly Filipino woman who's been in the country for 50 years, and Fabian Schmitz, a man from Germany who lives in New Hampshire, who had a minor marijuana possession charge that was dismissed by the court years ago. In Washington state, authorities arrested farm worker union leader and well-known immigrant rights activist Alfredo Lelo Juarez Zeffirino. Ben Johnson, the executive director of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, said, quote, "There isn't a lot of consistency on what they're doing, except trying to find any and every reason to prevent people from coming back into the United States and any and every reason to try to keep people out of the United States," end quote. Next, we have international news about Myanmar and Turkey. First, on Friday, a massive 7.7 level earthquake hit Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, killing at least 2,800 people, and recovery from the quake has been troubled by a continued civil war. Earlier this week, rebel groups unilaterally declared a ceasefire to support relief efforts, while the military, who took over from the democratically elected leader in 2021, had refused to do the same until today, continuing to shoot at rebels and aid trucks while people were buried under rubble and bridges collapsed. The epicenter of the earthquake was in the second largest city of Mandalay, but the impacts of the quake were widespread across the country and even into neighboring Thailand, where a building in Bangkok that was under construction collapsed, killing at least 2 people. This is a brief update about an ongoing fight about democracy and autocracy in Turkey. A week and a half ago, the mayor of Istanbul and the Turkish president's main political rival was arrested for alleged corruption charges. This comes after the main opposition party, led by the Istanbul mayor, won convincing victories in cities nationwide in municipal elections of 2024, even in districts that had long been strongholds for the party of the sitting president, Erdogan, who has been the president for 11 years. Since the arrests, hundreds of thousands of protesters across the country have returned to the streets and are calling for an economic boycott. Nearly 2,000 people have been arrested, including some journalists that were covering the protests. Next, we have an international news update about Gaza. Over the last week, Israel has increased its attacks on Gaza after rejecting the planned ceasefire agreement and presenting a new proposal. Today, the defense minister announced plans to extend their operations in Gaza, including a large-scale evacuation of Gaza's population from combat zones. Last week, the number of Gazans killed surpassed 50,000, and hundreds have been killed since the increased operations last week, including an airstrike on a United Nations Relief and Works Agency clinic that acted as a shelter for displaced people in northern Gaza, where at least 9 children were killed. The lack of food aid and fuel has forced the closure of all bakeries in Gaza, and the risk of famine rises. Finally, we have nature news about carbon dioxide reduction. Carbon capture technologies were touted as a necessary solution to human emissions warming the planet. Now listen, this is my humanities degree interpretation. Okay, here's how carbon capture is supposed to work. It took concentrated carbon dioxide emissions from polluting sources like power plants, stored it in underground vault, and then reused that as fuel. But it didn't have technology to pull lower concentrations of carbon dioxide that had already been released from the atmosphere to reduce the existing levels until now. Researchers at the University of Cambridge have found a way to take carbon dioxide from the air and turn it into a fuel named syngas, creating a carbon-neutral energy cycle. Currently, all syngas, which is a highly potent fuel, is made by burning fossil fuels. This direct air capture machine captures the air at night and uses the sunlight of day to convert the carbon dioxide to syngas, which can be used to power vehicles. Cool, right? Thanks for joining me to hear the news summary today. News about the United States and the world can be a lot, and I'm glad that we can face it together. Just a note to remind people that I've shifted for now to once-a-week updates. Thank you to everyone who's subscribed via Substack or follows the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And an extra thank you to the paid supporters who help make this offering possible. I'm looking to surpass 200 subscribers on Substack by the end of April, so please share with your friends. After a listener request, I am including a print news summary via a link on the Substack post if you'd prefer to read as opposed to listen to these updates. If there are requests or feedback that you have, I would love to hear about it. Feel free to send them my way at groverreadsthenews@substack.com. Okay, everyone. I'm rooting for you. Take care out there. Until next time, be well.